What's up, brother? It's your boy, Mike Muse, with the conversation of the Mike Muse Show. I am so excited to be in conversation with you right now. The big topic is just NFTs. I have gotten this so much from you guys about what are my thoughts, what am I thinking. I've done a lot of conversations around it, how I'm processing it. Is it really a space I'm really watching and looking to get more involvement in and looking to have a better understanding of it? What really got my attention was what was happening, and I talk about this with you guys a lot, audience, about what was happening in Art Basel. And I talk about how they had an entire NFT section that was actually part of their conference. You know, I was talking to you a lot about the way the space is growing in an emerging market and such growth opportunities. But I couldn't wait to bring my next guest on to help us lead into a conversation and discourse on just what the heck is an NFT. So I couldn't think about a better expert than Roger Dickerman, who is the CEO of Artifex, which is a tagline. They're like the Sotheby's of NFTs. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. But before we begin, what's happening, Roger?
How are you, Mike? So nice to be here.
Good. Nice to be here, man. Yeah, I'm excited to be with you, man. Like, talk to me a little bit about, before we even get into Artifacts, before we get into everything, just what is an NFT?
NFT, non-fungible token, but that sounds like a bunch of nonsense. I think the substance behind an NFT is this: it's digital ownership. It's how do you own and possess a digital asset? If you think about when you play games, when you look at an image on your screen, there was never a way to own that stuff before. Yeah. And now there is, and it's an NFT.
Talk to us about like the ownership of it though. Like, how does one maintain ownership of it? And an audience, how I like to describe it, how I thought about it would really make me really enjoy it. You know, Roger, as my audience knows, I love art. I do a lot of conversations around art at LACMA and at Art Basel. I host conversations around art. And so I always talk about the provenance. And I always talk about a lot of times when we have art hanging on our walls, we're just the custodians of the art. We technically don't own it. We do, but we own it for a short period of time. When we die, this art doesn't get taken with us to our grave. Maybe some people get buried in their art. I don't know. But normally it gets passed down in the estate, or it gets given, to a museum or to a gallery. So we're just the custodians of it. And what I've always loved about NFT was this idea of keeping the provenance in terms of equity and payment to the original artist. Because audience, once an art piece gets sold for $10, I buy it, and then I sell it to Roger for $100 million. The artist doesn't see any of that $100 million sales and proceeds, but yet they're only getting the $10 that I bought from them. And so for me, Roger, the NFTs allows for individuals to be able to keep a piece of the money, a piece of the income, if you will, and a piece of the value as it accumulates and as it grows. Is that a good description of it? Is that a good way of what NFTs are solving for?
It really is. And once you mention the word provenance, I immediately know what you know what you're talking about. Yeah. So provenance and royalties, I think we can look at those two words as the magic of this, because so often in the headlines, and rightfully so to some extent, they focus on the big dollars being thrown around. They focus on, unfortunately, some of the scams that go on in any burgeoning space, right? Scams and scammers flock to new technology or new assets that can be taken advantage of. But when we get to, again, the substance behind it, let's look at that word provenance. The magical thing about the blockchain is you know exactly what that provenance is, exactly what the art, who the artist is that it ties to, who the brand it is that it ties to. And I mean, the Mona Lisa, right? There are infamous forgeries and plenty of paintings in our history that we did not know for tens or hundreds of years whether that was the actual real deal. The blockchain affords us an opportunity when you know what to look for. And I do imagine it will be more seamless in the future, but when you know what to look for, you know exactly whether it's the real thing or not.
Is that why? So let me ask you the question that, there's always this narrative, Roger, of a chicken or the egg. What is an NFT most helpful for? Is it the creator or is it the collector?
It's the fusion of the two. I mean, it's a new creative economy and it's a new collector economy. If you think about, let's just take the digital artist, right? Let's not take a traditional artist. Let's go with digital. And a digital artist 10 years ago, they had only a few options, right? They had to go get hired or they had to go get contracted, right? To create something for somebody else, to create art that we see on Times Square, art that we see in commercials, art that we see in video games. Now, all of a sudden, they're afforded this opportunity to go directly to consumer and collector via the NFT. There's a way for that collector to own the actual art that Times Square, the video game, etc. were using. So I would say it's a revolution on both sides.
I like I say revolution, not disruptor. Or is it, can it be both? Can both be true?
And I think you do see some large scale organizations rebelling against the notion of the NFT. Now, some of the rebellion is substantive. Again, there are those scams. We're working through them, right? We're working through them real time to build mechanisms to make provenance more seamless, to make the tech more seamless, to push the scammers to the fringes of the space. Yeah.
Now, I know also too, right, the big buzzwords right now is that we see a lot of artists either selling their album as an NFT, selling a song as an NFT. I know there are new platforms that are being built up right now that allows people to participate in owning an NFT of a song for an independent artist. Talk to me more about, one, why do you think music artists are so heavily intrigued in this? And if you could, walk us through how that works. Like if I have a song and I want to give it as an NFT. So why and then how?
So why is musical artists, same as the digital artists, they had one or a few options. They had to go to that label to reach the consumer. You did have some wildly creative musicians find nuanced ways to go to consumer, but it wasn't clean. Now all of a sudden they can via the NFT. So that's the reason. Now you have trailblazing artists like Blau, who's extremely popular and is leading a whole generation of musicians into NFTs. But you have him going directly to consumer with that NFT and now experimenting with split royalties. And that's where this gets wild and fascinating. Now all of a sudden you come to me, a Blau fan or a musician fan, and you say, hey, this song that you love, you can own it, but what does that actually mean? I'm going to give you half the royalties too. So now I'm tied in. I become an even more rabid fan of Blau because I'm invested. And I think that's where things, when you talk about passing through IP, royalties, these kinds of things, I mean, the mind can spin to consider the future possibilities of that.
Yeah. I mean, so right now we're seeing it in the digital art space. We're seeing it in the music space, also too in the collecting of the card space. Do you see any other areas that are growing with the NFT space? And is it only just for creators and content creators? Well, it's because NFT seems to be tied with content and content creators, right? As it stands right now.
I like to say this, and I know it sounds hyperbolic, but NFTs will eat everything, right? They are going to become our house titles. They're going to become our car titles. They're going to become our medical records. That's the boring stuff, right? I mean, these are massive industries, but the tech or the beginnings of the tech, it's just better to store those things. I think creatives get all the attention because it's exciting, right? It's exciting. It's what we like to look at. It's what we like to listen to. It has all the pizzazz. And so that's where the focus goes. But if we were to take that step back and go macro, NFT technology, blockchain technology, it's going to take it all.
Yeah. So before we get into the technology and the blockchain technology of it all, again, right, I want just to walk my audience through just use cases, just to kind of have familiar with the everyday use of it so they have a full understanding before we get to more of the nitty gritty, maybe some of the more boring technical stuff, but that's the stuff I love. And my audience loves too as well. So just kind of just FYI. So if I'm an independent artist, right, and I'm listening to this conversation, why do I want to maybe go an NFT route? And then how would I go out by putting my album as an NFT or a single as an NFT?
Great question. So I would say if you want a more direct relationship with your consumer, right, start there. So I would say I would lean to the creators who enjoy the marketing aspect of it. Because here's the benefit to going with a record label or a creative agency. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. They bring the audience to you in some ways. The best ones bring the audience to you. If you're leaning into NFTs, you have to think about either I'm going to take that piece on myself or I'm going to align with someone who helps me out there, right? In terms of getting the eyes on my NFTs, because it is quite a noisy space right now. But in terms of the how, I mean, if you do want to shoulder that load, or if you want to partner with someone who's shouldering that load, the tech is getting easier and easier and easier. I think a great shout out goes to Manifold Studios. They're doing wonderful work in NFTs. They are leaning into artist provenance, and they are trying to make the tech as seamless as possible. So now you can go to Manifold Studios, simple website, and within an hour, you can have your artist-owned contract up and running. You can mint NFTs to it, and then you can then place it on any of the major platforms, OpenSea, Foundation, and a number of others. So they are blazing trails in that regard, where it's becoming easier and easier for an artist who does want to do that to do that.
You're like a one-stop shop.
Yeah, they're becoming the one-stop shop of artist-led tech.
Wow. Okay, so Roger, say I'm listening, and say Blau, for example, and I'm listening, I like Blau. How then do I get into getting a piece of the NFT, or not him specifically, just in general, an artist? Like, how, as me just listening to this conversation right now, like, yo, I really want to do an NFT for one of my favorite artists. I want to grab it. How would one do that?
There are a lot of different platforms now. So there are the specific curated platforms. So what I would say with that is you'd start with Blau's social accounts. You go to Twitter, you go to his Discord, you get in there and you go to their official links, and you make sure, you make sure that you're on the right account. You make sure that it's Blau's real account. That's very, very important. You make sure that the official link you're getting is directly from him. It should be easy to find. Blau's a great example. He's blue check marked. You're going to know you're in the right place. Now, he has NFTs in a number of different curated platforms. He's launching one himself right now, but if we go to another major one, Nifty Gateway, that a lot of people in industry have heard of, he has a number of NFTs on Nifty Gateway, and several of those, like we talked about earlier, are tied to crazy royalty structures. So you can actually be invested in Blau and in the success of that track by possessing those NFTs. So I would say start with the artist directly, find their social accounts. Really, they all have them. Make sure you're in the right place. Go to your official links. See whether they're on the curated platforms like Nifty Gateway, like Foundation, like Maker's Place, etc. Or you can go to more of the aggregator economies, and that's like an OpenSea. So OpenSea, you have to know what you're looking for a little bit. You're going to see it all. It's not curated, right? They're letting everybody in. So again, be careful at this stage of the NFT game. But some stuff on OpenSea is blue checkmark. That's going to give you the vote of confidence, the measure of confidence. Then you can have the confidence again to dive in, explore, and maybe grab something if it suits you.
I love it. Now, before I go to your company in digital art, talk to me, if you can, talk to me about the process. So say once I go to OpenSea, I go to all these places, and let's say I want to buy something with my bank debit card, right? Mm-hmm. Like, can I do it that way? Is it that easy to do, or is there other things that need to be done?
That's a great call out. And so we can segment NFTs into two divisions, right? And this side is debit cards, credit cards, bank account. And really then you're going to want to go to Nifty Gateway, Maker's Place, and I believe Rarible now has them up. But that means you can go there, you can put your card on file, and you can approach it more like a traditional buying experience. And really Nifty Gateway pioneered a lot in that regard. The other side of it is, if your favorite artist is on OpenSea, let's say, unfortunately, that's where cryptocurrency and a little bit more of that layered tech comes in. You are going to have to transact in Ethereum in most cases. And so again, a little cryptocurrency knowledge is required there, but you can get over that hump with the right resources.
Thank you so much for explaining like the who, the what, the how. Mm-hmm. I want to use music because sometimes music is a little bit more palatable to understand than we get into art, and then like digital art example as well, because a lot of people have conversations about digital art. I'm wildly fascinated by digital art, which is your company. So mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about your company, and why do they call it the Sotheby's, of the art world?
Well, I won't call it the Sotheby's, right? Let me tell you a little bit about what we're getting at.
Sure.
Here. All right.
Yeah.
Because we're in a little bit of a different vertical than Sotheby's, but I like
that. Roger,
that.
That was the tagline that it was described to me as.
Let's go. I love it. I love it. Let's go. So I love that you brought up Art Basel, because art is art. Art is a $60 billion global market, $50 to $60 billion global market, depending on when you're talking about, right? But art is real, art is substantive, and it has always been. So when I got into NFTs, I saw art first. And as I was watching this thing go parabolic at the end of 2020 into 2021, I said to myself, let's preserve this history. There are artists that are leading the tech forward. Digital art is the latest renaissance of art, right? Let's bring those artists to the surface. And again, make sure that they're immortalized, make sure that we know who was pioneering that NFT tech. And so Artifex is about bringing 100 artists forward across all sorts of categories like sports and music, like photography and landscape, like entertainment arts. You can keep going down the line, but our goal is to represent the entirety of the art NFT space and honor the digital artists making a real difference there. And then we do so by leaning into the most popular word in town right now, the metaverse, right?
Yeah.
What is the metaverse? It's a place where people interact, but it's a place that you can be immersed in. You see 3D objects in, right? And so we are taking the art of these artists, we're making it metaverse compatible 3D objects, and you'll see them all over your favorite future metaverses as we go on here.
Now, what do you say to those people who say digital art, like, why? Like, it's not real, you know? What do you say to that, to people who say those things?
It's as real as any other artistic medium, right? Let's look at why people don't think it's real. And it was the Instagrams and the Facebooks and a lot of Web 2 that put forth these companies where you could view things for free. You could view digital art for free. You view it everywhere for free. But when we look at the models behind it, where does the money go? Well, the money goes to Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or any of these places, because those clicks and those eyes are extremely valuable. So the art has always been what's built those platforms. The beauty of Web3, which is where, you know, NFT tech rests, is now all of a sudden those eyes and those collectors, it's benefiting the creatives.
Mm-hmm. So another question, now we're talking about collecting art. There also too is this narrative that digital art is for those of means. Sometimes it's been described as, you know, those millennials and young folks who have, you know, disposable income who are playing in that space. You know, what do you say to that?
It's a valid concern. It really is. And it will be a thing of the past in short order. But what we need to happen is we need the tech to keep getting better and better and better. And the rise of the low cost NFT is going to be a real thing. It's similar to how you might go to, let's stick with music. You might go to a band's concert, right? And you go to that concert and you stand in a merch line and you buy a t-shirt, you buy an album, or you buy a poster. And that stuff, while some might consider expensive, is attainable, right? You can look at that and you could say, hey, a $55 t-shirt might be considered expensive, but I can make it happen, right? I can stand in that line and I can pull out my hard-earned money and I can get it. But now all of a sudden you look over here at NFTs, you might look at a musician, you say, is that right? The only way I can access this musician is a $2,000 NFT? Well, that seems out of reach. I think in short order, as the tech improves, and it's getting a little nuanced, but like Ethereum gas fees are a concern. It's like a transaction fee associated with a lot of these NFTs. That will all be a thing of the past. That will get better and better and better. And you'll see what I call the rise of the low-cost NFT. Same as a sticker, an album, a t-shirt, a poster of your favorite band at that physical concert. You will see that become more and more and more popularized. And that, I think, will truly lead to the mainstream adoption of NFTs.
I love that. I love how sometimes early adopters could be a barrier depending upon your entry, but as the technology grows, and also too, as more users get involved within this space, and then I think too, as well as more artists get involved with the space. Talk to me then a little bit about, so this is fun. I never even thought about this until just now. A lot of times when we talk about people who are interested in collecting in the art world, right, in their first time, you know, you always want to think about, you know, just don't buy art for the idea of it being an investment only. Like you can, right? And everyone does. But you also too want to have pieces in your collection that mean something to you, right? That's authentic to you, that you actually like, love, and enjoy. And I always tell people a lot of times is, you know, don't go start at the Gagosian gallery, right? Maybe it's a little bit out of your price range, maybe, right? But maybe sometimes start like at your local, you know, college's art and visual art school, and maybe purchase some of their earlier works to get you going, the things that are drawn towards you, and then maybe it will grow an investment. Is there a comparison to that in the digital art world and in the digital space, kind of tracking that line of thinking?
There is. And I like your call out of buy what you like. I think it's one of the most powerful statements out there, that even if you are treating it as an investment, if you start with buying what you like or the investment that you like, I think you end up happier, right? Even if you lose on something, if you like what you have, you're going to end up being happier. But to go back to your point, I mean, that's where you can look at a nifty gateway as an entry point, right? Because you can find a $50 NFT on Nifty Gateway. Whereas if you go to certain artists or on other platforms, again, you're talking about in the multiple thousands of dollars, or in some of these these quickly becoming legendary brands of CryptoPunks or Bored Apes, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, and not that many people have that. So in that regard, I would say a great place to start that accepts credit cards and debit cards and has more cost-effective NFTs would be someplace like a Nifty Gateway.
I love it. Roger Dickerman, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I am so glad you stopped by the Muse show. If anything else, you've answered a lot of questions that I had about NFTs and the place and space and where it can exist, not only just for my own work, but just out of curiosity. And thank you for explaining the idea of the value. Really thank you for explaining like the technology and the use cases. So really appreciate your time here today.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it too. I appreciate yours as well. And the big thing I want to say to everyone is the headlines are out there. They're out there, right? They're out there and they're rampant. And I think a lot of people have their ideas of what NFTs are. But if we just all take a step back and we say ownership of digital assets, art and gaming, and all of these use cases that we've mentioned are important, and everything will just keep getting better and better and better and more seamless. And I'll see you on the other side.
I love it. Roger, I want to have you back. I want to keep this conversation going, particularly getting to gaming. We didn't get a chance to touch on gaming. My audience loves gaming a lot. So let's make sure we have you back.
Would love to. One of the best use cases out there. Take care, Mike.
Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Roger Dickerman. Such a great conversation. I hope you learned as much as I did. I can't wait to be in conversation with you again. Until next time, folks, peace.